Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is another US election, Harris-Trump showdown analysis. Fourth day in a row now. I'm sure these will get less frequent as we go on. There won't be too much new news. I don't know, there probably will be, but you've definitely got a big Harris bump at the moment in terms of the excitement that is palpable concerning Biden stepping back and her stepping forward and reinvigorating the Democrats, giving them, allowing them to exhale this huge sigh of relief as they realise that there is a path forward for them, and then get super excited. So there's an element of letting go of past tensions and then embracing something new and getting behind someone as much as being against someone else. And I've talked about this before, how they need to be presenting a positive narrative, a story that is big on substance, big on policy, and sells a positive vision of what America will be under her guidance, as opposed to just campaigning negatively against Trump. So that's really important. But before we go into that in any more detail, it's worth noting that apparently Obama is due to nominate Harris soon. There have been some rumors kicking about that he was like angry about Biden nominating her quickly. Obama was behind the George Clooney op-ed and was trying to get Biden step back, and then there would be an open convention, and he probably had his idea. I think there were claims that he wanted Mark Kelly as the number one, but these are just rumors, and the fact that she stepped forward and the parties coalesced around her made Obama angry or something. Who knows whether that's true? It doesn't really matter anymore, to be perfectly honest. But he will no doubt, he's no other option but to endorse her, since everyone else has, and she's doing really well at the moment. So at the moment there is this wave of enthusiasm that she is riding as much as leading, and there is that gap between the decision to step into Biden's shoes and when the very negative attack ads from the Republicans will start coming out. And it'll be interesting to see where they go, what direction they go with those. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But anyway, Obama is due to apparently, as it says here, due to endorse her. Aides to Obama and Harris have also discussed arranging for the two of them to appear together on a campaign trail, though no date has been set. Of course, he's got a really big persona, hasn't he? Public persona, and is still overwhelmingly popular. Her job is going to be, as I've said previously, is about mobilizing, about exciting people to get out and vote, who either who have never voted before. So the young people who have turned 18 since the last election, and since 2016 really, have turned 18 and haven't been too enthused about voting, or are low information voters who don't have that much care, a bit of apathy. It's driving them to the polls. Let's get these young people. And it's also getting people who had got disenchanted with the state of like two 80-year-old men battling out with each other. Get those back. Those are going to be older voters. You get some of those who have leaked from the Democrats over to the Republicans. I don't know how easy that will be, and it's about the demographics of black and brown and young, as mentioned, and women, of course, and those in the centre, those independents. It doesn't matter what opinion of Kamala Harris that people over there have. Right? Those dyed-in-the-wool Republicans are never going to vote for her. You don't need to worry. They will be coming up with all sorts of stuff, and it doesn't matter that she's universally hated by those people. Right? That's not relevant at all. All that matters is independents feel comfortable enough to vote for her. So that's going to be where she is going to be positioning herself. Now, it's really interesting when you look at her, say, her first rally in Wisconsin, and you see how overwhelmingly positive it is. I talked yesterday about laughing, about how you've never seen Trump laugh, like actually open mouth laugh. Some people took the mickey out of what I'm saying, some more Republicans, but stuff like that is super important. There's a lot of psychology that goes on, especially with low information voters who are not going to be sitting down and thinking they're voting over a whole bunch of policies. Is going to be, who do I like more? Just literally who appears appeals to me more. And so when you have Kamala Harris coming out to a Beyonce song, which is really powerful, that has now been turned into her. She's been given permission to use it by Beyonce. Has been turned into her first campaign ad, if you like. That is really positive, really very well thought out, actually, and it's taking some clips from, I think, this very first Wisconsin rally. You think, right, that is about hitting the ground running and hitting the ground with a positive vibe. So there's a lot to be said about vibes, isn't there?
It starts here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This campaign is officially underway. The excitement palpable. This is a party reborn since Joe Biden announced his exit. It's Kamala's time now.
You all helped us win in 2020, and in 2024 we will win again.
And it's interesting, she's used this no going back, this idea that no going back to Trump and no going back to this sense of what America was in the 1950s, segregation or division, so on and so forth. It's about trying to unite going forward and not going backwards. Interesting positioning there. So anyway, a lot of positivity from her appearances, which then puts to bed these ideas that she won't be very good at the stunt. Her speeches, her teleprompter speeches are well delivered, and she's just being met with huge amounts of enthusiasm. We'll talk about that enthusiasm in a second. Now, I'm not going to play you her advert because I'll probably get hit with a copyright infringement due to it having that Beyonce song, but it is really powerful ad, and it's very positive and gets you kind of excited. It really does have the right emotional pitch for those objectives I was talking about, for appealing to those people and getting the young on board. And Beyonce is a supremely popular person. That song Freedom is brilliant, and in fact they take the story of freedom. So I talked yesterday about narrative. What is the Kamala Harris narrative going to be? And I wonder whether it's going to be about freedom, about liberty, which is interesting because that's something that Republicans of the libertarian sort have previously been big on, isn't it? You know, freedom of speech, liberty, etc., 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 all these kind of ideas of liberty. And yet I'd call it false libertarianism, because on the one hand they say it's all about liberty, and on the other hand they say you can't have freedom over your bodily autonomy, you can't do this, you can't do that. So there's economic freedom, but social constraints. And you could argue that with the left it's the other way around, where you get social freedom and economic restraints, so regulation and so on. So there's always that tension, but she's going hard on the narrative, I think, of the theme of freedom. Reproductive freedom is one of those big ones there. So that's really interesting, but well worth going to watch that ad. I think it's good. Now, someone here said, Robert, whoever they are, just a random, but it's interesting to get a sense of what just normal people think who are going and watching these rallies and whatnot. Finally, watching Harris speech impressions. Right, 1, Wisconsin as a first rally was a clear trumpet. This is not the Clinton campaign. 2, the headline said Milwaukee, but this was actually in West Allis, a suburb, right place to fight. Interesting there. 3, she's your strict but fun aunt, which is interesting. So she's a prosecutor, but she's also being fun and sometimes quirky and laughing and smiling, that fun element. But she's also the prosecutor that gets then deadly serious about how she's going to prosecute, say, Trump. 4, she is leaning heavily into persuasion, not base pumping. So this is not just about turning out your base and enthusing your base, but it's about persuading other people. Now, this is a super important point, because I said to you yesterday that Trump is all about his base and his base only, right? So he's not playing the persuasion game. And this is why my opinion is that Trump will lose this election. Like I said that months ago with Biden, but this is before Biden had that decline. I was like, Trump has got a ceiling to his vote, and unless he goes outside that box, right, he will not be able to attract more and more people to him. So he mobilized massively in the last election, and he still didn't win, right? Now, if as it was, Biden then could keep his vote share the same, as in keep mobilize the same people who voted as the last election, then I don't think Trump could win the election, especially with a strong economy and the incumbency idea. But obviously, Joe Biden went into that decline. But for Trump, he's still just shoring up that base, beating that drum, saying the same kind of things, having very kind of negative campaigning, not really full of much substance. So talks about all those weird things he does, and Hannibal Lecter and sharks and electrocutions and whatnot, like I've said many times before, and immigration. But really, that's it. Outside of that, just, I'm the one that turned around Roe v. Wade, and everyone, all the legal experts wanted that. Well, actually, A, that's not true, and B, you need to understand that most of the population, as according to every single poll, is not in favour of that. So if that's what you're campaigning on, you're going to struggle to move over into that centre ground and take those people and bring them to you. You need to be persuading and not shoring up and otherizing. Right, so we'll talk a bit about otherizing in a minute as I build on some things I said yesterday. And I think the Republican campaigning, and this is not me trying to be anti-Republican and pro-Harris here, it's just the reality of it. When you've got a hard ceiling, I don't think you get more votes. What you can do is hope that the other side doesn't mobilize as much. So, and that was what was going to happen. So Biden's trouble was going to be making sure everyone that turned up in 2020 turned up again in 2024, and people were not enthused. And that's why he had to go. And that's why I said he had to go, because he wasn't going to get the mobilization. He would win on policy and the state of the economy and all these other things if he could mobilize those people. And Trump is not playing the persuasion game. Okay. She is leaning heavily into persuasion, not base pumping, which is correct. The base came home 2 hours after two 80-year-olds weren't running. We're not going back, point 5. We're not going back is really good. We're not going back to Trump chaos, and we're not going back to retrograde policies. And the 6th point here is super important. Joy. She enjoyed herself. The crowd enjoyed themselves. So that kind of positivity is not kind of like Trump saying, look at the mainstream media over there, boo, and everyone's like, boo, boo. Like, yeah, maybe there's a bit of fun in that kind of otherization and always having a go at someone else. But actually, if you come away from a rally where you haven't had to listen to 90 minutes of a rambling madman, right? If you come out of a rally of like short and sweet, and you've listened to Kamala Harris, and you've had that right music that's uplifting, and everyone's getting behind it, and she's joyful and you're joyful, then you come out of that and you go and tell everyone what an amazing experience that was, etc., etc., etc. It's just this, she enjoyed herself, the crowd enjoyed themselves, and they all enjoyed each other. Her smile, her laugh, the twinkle in her eye. I cannot tell you how important these are with marginal voters. In the words of my Gen Z niece, immaculate vibes. Well done, MVP. So that honestly, don't underestimate the importance of those smaller things. And then when you go, and already the Harris HQ has put this out, when you then go to the Trump, this is Trump's North Carolina rally, pretty much same time. It's still shocking to me that this probably won't make the news on a single major network, says Amy McGrath. So Trump says he will fire America's military generals and replace them with NASCAR drivers and football coaches. Actually listen to this, right? Listen to this and go, who's the senile one now? Who is the person with dementia? This is just bonkers.
It's great. How you do it is amazing. It's so amazing. We should send you into, I've always said, get some of these guys. I have a lot of friends in that world. I don't know. I think, is it Roger Penske, like a great guy too? He won 20 Indianapolis 500s. This guy wins all the time. I mean, we appreciate talent. I said, let me use these guys to guide our military a little bit. When you can win so many races, that's okay, you guide. Same thing with coaches. You take some of the greatest football coaches, you put them at a table. What do you like, coach? Because in its own way, it's not so much really different. It's great. How you do it is amazing.
Just is making no sense, and in that way, it's not just so much any different. What from directing an army? You're going to put a coach or a NASCAR driver because they've done really well and won 20 races in a row. They've got transferable skills to leading an army and directing the European forces against a Russian threat. Jimmy Smith, a NASCAR driver, just like. And so what you end up having now is some 78-year-old man who's just spitballing live. That doesn't really pay attention to speech, like teleprompter speeches. He'll use them as a bit of a guide, but he goes off on one. And actually, like, if you listened, there wasn't any whooping and hollering. There's quite a lot of silence. There's a bit of like people behind him are holding their signs. But if I was listening to that, I'd be like, what are you banging on about, mate? What are you banging on about? And so this is a really big difference here. Like, those people that turn up there are probably all going to vote for Trump, right? No one's going to go away from there going, well, that was weird. I'm not going to vote for him now. They still will vote for him. But if you're talking about taking the clips of these and then showing them to the public or memeing the, that would generate negative memes, right? And I don't know, it's just odd. Let me know what you think about that difference between the two there. Right, we're going to go to Senator Caney, and like, this is a guy who's chosen, Virginia senator, isn't he? He was chosen by Hillary Clinton to be her running mate, and obviously that never happened. But just going back to the idea that, like, should Biden have stepped down? I think now everyone agrees he should have done. But there's still some who are like, oh no, it was wrong of this to have happened. But the reality was the internal polling was coming through that were absolutely terrible. And here's an indication of how bad it was for the Democrats.
Senator Kaine, good morning. There's reporting that one of the points that made President Biden decide to drop out of the race was a briefing that his aides gave him over the weekend that showed him a number of battleground state polls, had him losing all of them, but also suggesting that some pretty reliably Democratic states could be in jeopardy were he to remain the top ticket, including Virginia. And there has been public polling that show a neck-and-neck race there between Biden and Trump. So let me get your assessment of course, your home state. Do you think that was accurate from what you're seeing each and every day, talking to constituents? And do you think that that will change now that it's Vice President Harris atop the ticket?
Jonathan, that is accurate reporting. I'm on the ballot this year, too, so I'm doing my own polling. And I shared with the White House and with the Biden campaign last Wednesday the results of 5 post-debate polls, public but also internal polls, that showed that the race was a dead heat. And I shared that directly with the White House and with the campaign because it was data that they needed to know. And they were doing their own polling as well. So, Joe Biden won, Joe and Kamala won Virginia by 10 points in 2020. And so when you see polls saying it's a dead heat in Virginia, you take that very seriously. Now, to the Biden-Harris and now Harris campaign's credit, I was at an office opening Saturday in Stanton, Virginia. It was the 17th office that they have opened in Virginia.
So now, okay, so we've talked about he's talked about how polls were bad. So it was obvious that something needed to change, right? So everyone was muted in the Biden campaign. There was no enthusiasm for a Biden presidency. That enthusiasm came more from the abstract idea of the threat of Trump and the kind of the power of some of the policies. But actually, Biden himself wasn't enthusing people in a way that was necessary. So now we're going to go on to enthusiasm and this wave that's happened. And this is why, I'm still talking about it in those kind of terms, because I think we're still in that at that point where this wave is still cresting at the moment, and it's all very positive. Now that isn't going to sustain forever, right? And that will come to an end, and then maybe that's when I said yes. Then that's when you choose your VP, or you get the Obama endorsement, and you get on stage with him or something like that. You need to keep that momentum going and not allow Republicans to bring it down. Now, they are going to be, I think, mainly trying to bring this down, because I don't know how much of the positive, life-affirming messages they have really to combat it, when their main policy framework is Project 2025, which looks a bit like a dictatorship. I think for them it's going to be a lot of negative campaigning. So the question is, is the enthusiasm that has been evidenced by is the enthusiasm that's been evidenced by Democrats over the last few days and the general public? I think some of these independents, is it a genuine, right? Is it, because we'll learn that actually some Republicans are claiming it's all manufactured. Is it genuine? and how big is it? You know, what demographics does it affect? Anyway, back to Kane.
And unlike some past campaigns, these offices are staffed with fantastic Virginia political talent, not just, you know, whiz kids from other states coming into Virginia, but these are battle-ready Virginia tested campaign pros who are staffing these offices. And that was already happening, you know, before this switch was made, and it's going to continue. They are taking Virginia very seriously.
Yes, and Mike, that's an interesting point. The senator.
So, sorry, not so much about the enthusiasm wave there, but actually the seriousness with which the campaign is taking seats that otherwise would have been deemed pretty safe. Like Virginia was a D+10 state, and you're thinking, right, we don't need to put our efforts there. We need to look at some of these other battleground states. So actually now that's in play. There's a number of these places, New Mexico, New Hampshire, Virginia, that otherwise would have been easy Democrat wins, but now they're needing to pump money, time and effort and volunteers into these places. But that's much easier to do when A, you get the funding, and B, you get the volunteers. And the funding comes from people being confident that the campaign will do well. So it kind of feeds itself. The more confident you are, the more likely you are to invest in it. And the more you invest in it, the better it's going to do, the more likely you are. So this is that snowball effect. And that is exactly what's needed in particularly some of these more challenging states. They just need to keep that wave rolling, and yes, so that comes down to, you know, donors, as I was mentioning, volunteers, and also things like memes and social media. And so these, particularly the volunteers and the donors, as I say, they are both reflective of this idea that the campaign will do well and Kamala could well win, and also predictive of that happening and causally important in that happening. Right, you can't win if you don't have donors and volunteers. So it's chicken and egg. But once you're on that snowball, it rolls and rolls and gets bigger and bigger. Now, talking about the social media aspect of this, here's an interesting article. Trump files complaint against. No, I was going to come to that later. Sorry. Here we have, where was it? This one. I've got my articles in the wrong order. So this one, Kamala Harris memes are all over the internet. Will tweets and TikToks turn into votes? So Charlie XCX with her Brat album, so she's actually a British artist, but she's pretty big in America, declared that she declared that the vice president is Brat, which is kind of a term that means she's a bit goofy, bit this, bit that, but she's basically cool. And the K-Hive, which was a movement that happened back in 2019 when she ran for 2020 president, of a social media movement and young people predominantly then, that's been rejuvenated. Can Gen Z's enthusiasm make a difference in November? So lots of examples of how she has been able to get some traction on the socials. We'll dip into the article a little later. While this year's election drew plenty of memes and online engagement, there was little excitement about the rematch of Joe Biden 81 and Donald Trump 78, and instead a pervasive sense of cynicism. Young people had reported feeling disengaged and apathetic about the upcoming elections, US politics in general. In a US News Generation Lab poll of voters 18 to 34 from early July, 61% of respondents agreed that the upcoming election would be among the most important in history, but nearly a third said they would probably or definitely not vote. So you've got a third of people from 18 to 34 being disenchanted, apathetic, and not likely to vote. Not likely or definitely not voting. Like, wow. Now, if you can get those people and you can get them to register and vote, if they aren't already registered, and if they are existing in some of these important battleground states, that is super important. Of those who said they were not or were unlikely to vote, 40% said it was because they didn't like any of the candidates, and 15% said they were turned off by politics. So changing the candidate then seems to have engaged some of these people to the point where they are now excited. It goes on later to talk. I I think this is someone called Annie Wu Henry. She views a furore around Harris among younger voters as both about Harris, but also something larger. It's about the potential for something new. It's about a political party that can be agile and make adjustments based on what they are hearing from the people. So it's almost like people feel they're being heard. Like, he's too old, I'm not going to vote. Oh, right, you've changed it up. Now we've got someone younger, and so on and so forth. Okay, now I feel like I'm part of this political process. Quote, I think it's really exciting, bring a lot of energy and hope to folks that haven't felt this way in some time, and for people that maybe haven't had a moment of hope like this in politics before. The buzz online is bringing results, said Mariana Pecora, the communications director for Voters of Tomorrow. The Gen Z-led liberal advocacy organisation had its best fundraising day in history, Pecora said, and saw more applied to join a chapter or start a chapter in 2 days than in the last month combined. Priorities USA, one of the largest liberal super PACs, told The Guardian on Tuesday that after Biden endorsed Harris, it saw a notable increase in the share of young people who said they plan to vote in the upcoming election. It's also brought a sense of joy and excitement not often seen in politics, Pecora said, particularly for a generation that came of age during one of the most difficult periods in recent history, from a growing political turmoil and the rise of far-right extremism in the US to COVID-19. Quote, we've had this history of young people not seeing a system that really works for us and not having too many figureheads that are really fighting for us, said Pecora, who was 13 when Donald Trump was first elected. A report from the Centre published last year that surveyed people from ages 10 to 24 found that adolescents are most interested in hopeful, uplifting content of people beating the odds. Right, now this then goes back to the campaign ad that I haven't showed you that Kamala Harris has just brought out. And it is exactly that. It's exactly that. It's a hopeful, uplifting campaign. Quote, I feel like that's Kamala's story, Uls said. That same study also found that in their entertainment, older teens are most interested in seeing a black woman as a hero of a story. Quote, maybe young people have been waiting for this. They've been waiting for a candidate they feel is representative of them, said Uls, who co-authored the report and also grew up with Harris. But while Harris's entry into the race has energized young voters, they also want to see real policy proposals that align with the issues most important to them, experts say. So while those kind of cultural things appeal to young voters, obviously that's not going to be enough to appeal to older voters in terms of, you know, your older cynical voter who's like, right, I'm more interested in policy. So as long as you are joining all these things together, quote, whether this translates to a large surge in youth voter turnout in November may come down to whether the new Democratic nominee can also convince young voters of a credible plan to address the existential threats they see in their everyday lives, said Sarah Swanbeck, the executive director of the Berkeley Institute for Young Americans, pointing to the climate crisis, protections for democratic institutions, and economic policy that will improve social mobility. And all of those things are the things that she is going to be campaigning on. Now, before I come to these Republican ideas there, let's so we'll go there first and then bring that in, and then we're going to come back to some of the facts and figures about the groundswell of support for Harris, right, and whether there is good evidence that there is that mobilization of particularly young people, etc., etc. Okay. So how are the Republicans going to deal with this? Well, like I've said before, they are going to go through, I think they're mainly going to concentrate on negative campaign attack ads and that kind of approach. Now, Republican attacks on Harris to get, quote, as ugly and bigoted as they can, say some. So we've already seen some of this. So there is a couple of things. So it was J.D. Vance in his speech talked about, you know, he, and in other talks has talked about cat-loving childless woman or whatever, but he talked about how Kamala Harris should be grateful, and that's the sort of thing you only say about immigrants, right? You should be grateful to America for giving you these opportunities. You never say that to a 80-year-old white man, like or whatever. So that was seen as a kind of a very somewhat subtler, still dog whistly kind of thing, right? And then you've got Tim Burchett, as I said yesterday, talking about she was only a VP because of DEI, and we're talking about that the kind of fallacious approach that is in a second. And so this has already started, but then you've had Kevin McCarthy and Mike Johnson say, actually, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And they're right, because they understand strategy. And they understand you are going to lose this election if you are going to otherize her, because you otherize who she kind of represents or people who identify with her. So if you're going to attack women without children, people of ethnic, black and brown, because she's interesting that she's both, her parents, one was Asian and one black African American or Jamaican, wasn't it? Sorry. So you've got, she kind of represents quite a lot of people in a sense. And if you start attacking those identities, then you are going to isolate yourself from support from those people more than not, right? So it's just not a strategically clever thing to do, but it is going to be where they are going to find themselves going. I'm sure they just won't be able to not do it, as you've seen already, right? So here, quote, it's obvious that the Republicans are going to play the race and gender card, which we've seen already at some of the attacks on social media, says Tara Setmeyer, a black woman who's co-founder and chief executive of the Seneca Project, a woman-led super political action committee. Quote, it may be a catnip for the MAGA base, but it will be a turn-off for the moderate voters in the battleground states that will determine this election. And that's absolutely true. So having built a campaign against Biden, Republicans are hastily recalibrating and racing to define Harris, 59, before she can define herself. They intend to tie her to Biden's immigration policy, which they say is to blame for a sharp increase last year in the number of people crossing the southern border with Mexico illegally. The second line of attack will revolve around the economy. Public opinion polls consistently show Americans are unhappy with high food and fuel costs, as well as the interest rates that have made buying a home less affordable. And so this is very interesting because the economy is doing really well, and actually average wages have increased above inflation consistently for 13 months plus in a row. So the problem is perceptions take much longer to catch up with reality. There's a very good 538 video about this about 4 months ago that looked at why is it that Americans don't feel that the economy is working in their favor when actually all the statistics show that it is. And they complain that things are expensive, but actually, relative to what they're earning, things have improved for them. So what is going on there? And there is, so COVID apparently played a big role in skewing people's perceptions, and people haven't actually got over. They're expecting things to have gone back to prior to COVID, things like prices, and that's never going to happen. We are going to have inflation every year, but it's whether it's under control and whether your wages are increasing at rates that can mitigate against that, so on and so forth. But anyway, that will definitely be the direction they will go in, as well as immigration. But it's whether they can't help themselves from attacking her in these other typical ways too. And then we've also had Trump has filed a complaint against Harris for taking over Biden's campaign funds. So then we're going to have these process things, which is like, why would you want to do this? This is nothing to do with anything other than you don't want them to succeed, right? So these kind of process things about rules, like you shouldn't be allowed to inherit that money. That money's been donated by people to a Democratic campaign, right? Surely it's up to those people themselves. If they're unhappy with it being used by Kamala Harris instead of Biden Harris, right? If they're unhappy with that, they'll complain. It's not up to you to complain on their behalf. So it's a really odd thing for him for Trump to do, but it's very typical because. And it's also reflective of a panic. So I think if you're going to try and get them on process, it means you're not very confident on getting them on policy and on campaigning. So I think that is very, very indicative there. Now, going back to the idea of DEI appointment, the idea of what Tim Burchett said, and I'm not going to play you what Kevin McCarthy again said. I played that to you yesterday where he said this is a stupid strategy, basically. And he's absolutely right. Kevin McCarthy was bang on. Republicans will lose if they go down the attacking her for being a woman, a person of color, and not having children, and so on and so forth. They need to be better than that.
In the United States, she is a former U.S. senator.
Oh, I need to turn off the 2x speed there.
These congressmen that are saying it, they're wrong in their own instance.
All right. So it's this bit.
So, Brendan, that's from a man, by the way, who was Speaker just in October. What can you say about the shift we've seen in the party just over these months?
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with Kevin McCarthy. These folks just can't help themselves. Look, it's important to appreciate your median House Republican has no idea what it takes to win a general election. All they ever care about is winning a primary, and guffawing at DEI jokes at a county GOP barbecue is very different than going out and winning the White House. This campaign on the Republican side has been a departure in that it has been marked somewhat by discipline by the Trump campaign, that they've been able to stay focused on the message that they wanted to do. If this becomes a new sideshow for Republicans, always having to track down the latest House member who makes a racially tinged remark, it's going to backfire. The people who are going to win this election are not people at those county GOP barbecues. It's people in the middle, who educated women who are going to be repelled by comments like that.
I can't tell you how important this point is, and it does go a long way to explain why they end up doing this. It's because when you are fighting in a Republican GOP Republican primary, you are trying to attract more Republican voters to vote for you rather than another Republican. And so what happens is you end up, and over the last few years, it's been a case of ending up going further and further to the right. Who can be more MAGA? Who can show themselves to be more Trumpy and more MAGA? That's how I win a race, right? So I win a Republican nomination if I become super right-wing MAGA. Okay, job done. Now I'm in that position. And now you're asking me what my opinion is about Kamala Harris's campaign for presidency. I am going to give you a criticism that has been born out of the politics that has got me to where I am now, which has been appealing to the MAGA people to get me voted in as a MAGA representative. I'm then going to splurge some fairly offensive stuff and then realise that that doesn't fall well, because I'm now not trying to appeal to my GOP primary crowd. I'm actually needing to appeal to the entire state or district that I'm representing. And that's a very different thing. So now it goes back to stop talking to the people over here and talk to the people in the middle. You don't need to talk to the people on the other side. You need to talk to the people in the middle. And that is what you fail to do if you attack her on those identity-led things.
I think they would be very wise to listen to Kevin McCarthy there.
It's a tradition, I think, Eddie, and I don't know if it's even makes sense or not, because we tend to think that history shows us vice presidential picks don't change any race, right? People vote the top of the ticket, generally speaking. But is it clear what might work for Kamala Harris, what might not, who it might be, who could help appeal to where they think there are gaps in her appeal? And who doesn't?
So what he's going to do now, I really do want to play this, because there's a bit of kind of philosophical argumentation going on here, which is always look for analogies and to see whether that logic works or not, right? And what he's going to do is not answer that question. He's going to go back and say, let's look at the DEI thing. So if you are one that is going to pick up Kamala Harris, and this is a really interesting point he makes here, it's really, really good. That if you are picking up Kamala Harris on DEI appointments, then what does that say about box checking for the people that you appoint as VP, because they are going to be strong with people in Pennsylvania, or they are going to be strong with white people, or they are going to be strong with evangelical Christians, like Mike Pence was Trump's pick because of that. And of course, that is an analogy for the DEI pick. It's really good.
Pull back just for a quick second. So remember the way in which many Republicans characterize Joe Biden's choice of Kamala Harris. She's a DEI choice. She only was chosen because she's a black woman, a woman of color, But it's not a DEI choice. If you're thinking about the Midwest, do I need to appoint a guy who's from Ohio? Do I need to get someone from the South, Lloyd Benston, in order so I can get Texas? Those aren't viewed as DEI decisions, even though we're talking about region. And here we're asking the question, how might she think of a ticket that could appeal to a broad swath of America, that could deepen her chances in, say, a swing state? Is that read as a DEI choice? Of course not, because what's underneath this, what's underneath the entire debate has always been race. So when we ask this question in terms of normal politics, traditional politics, it's okay to ask it, right, Chris?
Yeah.
When we ask it in this instance, here we are again, back at square one. So I think she has to make a choice for a vice president that will expand the map, that will deepen her chances, make her chances even better, and ignore the foolishness that's coming out from the other side.
So what this is so, I love it. This is a really good point, which is that it's not DEI. She wasn't employed because they have a quota of certain types of people that they need to employ. But she was employed because, well, she had merits, right? So the basis is you're not going to employ someone who's a complete muppet, right? So of all of your picks, everyone is going to be good enough. So you look at all the people, whether it be Josh Shapiro for her vice president pick, Josh Shapiro, Andy Bashir, Pete Buttigieg, so on and so forth. Yeah, or Mark Kelly, right? All of these are good enough people. Okay, so you've got the merit there. It's not that it is meritless. These people merit to be in that position. And then you go to strategy. So actually, she was employed as a vice presidential pick because she's a woman and a person of colour. Yes, that is important. Not because it's DEI, not because of quotas forced upon blah, 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 whatever criticisms you might have against DEI. Right, that's a whole different debate. But she would have been picked for her strategic usefulness in exactly the same way as every freaking VP is picked for that. So Mike Pence was picked because he was Trump's way of gaining purchase with the evangelical Christians that he clearly otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, he's not a Christian in any way, shape or form, and he's clueless. Like, what's your favourite book in the Bible? Yeah, don't ask me that. No, they're all my favourite. They're all great. And then he goes, 2 Corinthians. What? 2 Corinthians? No, 2 Corinthians. Yeah, like, he did, whatever. Like, so Pence was his strategic pick. You know, Josh Shapiro, Jewish and from Pennsylvania, and he's already merits everything else. You've got Pete Buttigieg, as far as an identity, as a gay white man. Or you've got Andy Bashir from, what is it, Kentucky, Roy Cooper. Yeah, Andy Bashir. You got Roy Cooper from North Carolina, who is, an older man, white man, who's got a southern accent, would appeal to, you're picking these people based on their identities because they will help you strategically. So, in a sense, you need to own it. It's not DEI, but it is strategy, and everyone does it, right? And so going down the route that she was picked because she was a woman of colour is absolutely correct in many senses. It's just not the DEI thing. So, yeah, but you can't criticise her on that because everyone does that. You can't criticise Biden on that because everyone does that. Of course, you pick people strategically. Okay, we're going to now look at, as from the Midas Touch Network, this is absolutely bizarre. So you get the claim that's coming out now that there is a manufactured enthusiasm that's taking place, as if everyone's faking it, right? As if I woke up not excited the other day and I've been either a victim to manufacture or I've somehow self-manufactured it.
This past week, with all of the energy and momentum growing around Vice President Kamala Harris, he attacks Taylor Swift. Watch this.
Exactly do her qualifications look like other than, again, the sort of intersectional magic of Kamala Harris and the fact that Democrats have to manufacture enthusiasm for, I've never seen this much manufactured enthusiation for anyone outside of maybe Taylor Swift's last album. It's amazing.
Yeah, me neither. It's so obvious. You cringe when you see it.
I have to be honest. I don't like.
This is Charlie Kirk and other people of that type.
Taylor Swift and at all. And
most guys don't.
Well, isn't that the real topic, right?
But that's kind of the real topic. And I feel as if she's being forced upon our culture. Like it's this Taylor Swift colonizing effort. I'm not a Taylor Swift fan. She's a narcissist. I don't think that she's very talented.
She's nasty. She's ugly. Nobody likes her. Nobody likes her. She looks like a teenage boy. Like dudes don't like her. Like if you put her in front of like, she's ugly.
That's true. Yeah. Does Taylor Swift have...
Just so like if you want to know how to strategize and how to win elections, this isn't it, right? Taylor Swift is the bugbear. She's the boogeyman of the Democrats, because last time she endorsed and she got people to get out and register to vote, and she's massively successful. She is insanely successful. I've got friends who parents like my age who went with their kids to see Taylor Swift concert and the Eras tour that's just taken place. She's insanely popular. She's also a nice human being. Like, if you listen to her being interviewed and look at, get an insight window into her life, she's a decent human being. She's also very talented. She's also outwardly beautiful as well as inwardly beautiful. So to sit there and say Taylor Swift is ugly, she's this, she's that, no one likes Taylor Swift, is just empirically wrong and nonsense. But what they're going to go on to, this idea that you're manufacturing, it's shoved down your throat and you're manufacturing enthusiasm.
Have any eggs left?
I don't think I don't know if she had it to start with.
You mean like bitter, angry women, and that's
like,
Taylor Swift,
like librarian, like.
So Taylor Swift is a bitter, angry woman, but you're not just a sad, bitter, angry man there.
Your worst teacher you had, feminism. That's Taylor Swift feminism. If I got dragged to one Taylor Swift concert, I will never go back. I was in the very back. It was awful. It was all women and gays. That was it. And I was like, I want to be dead right now.
So look, Swifties are now rallying behind.
So anyway, the reason I'm concentrating on this is because it leads on to this idea of manufactured enthusiasm, but also like Kamala Harris, it goes back to this building up a movement from the young and from the enthused that will help to spread the word positively. And what the Republicans are deeply afraid of, and they've been afraid of this for a long time. So Taylor Swift has been on their radar for the last 6 months, almost incessantly. If you watch Fox News, so much about Taylor Swift. There's all these digs about Taylor Swift. And in fact, so much so that Trump has been pulling in barbed comments about Taylor Swift at his rallies. But they are rightfully worried, because you have people in these positions of power that can drive registration and drive an excitement for, and yeah, you might then talk it's about manufacturing, but no, it's about enfranchising the young to be interested in politics and getting people to realize what's at stake and get them excited for someone who can then take that and run with it and drive and continue that momentum and build and build and build.
Behind Vice President Kamala Harris. This account was just created at Swifties for Kamala. Coalition of Swifties ready to mobilize Taylor Swift fans to help get Democratic candidates elected up and down the ballot. Here's a post they made recently. This is their pin post. We're doing good. We're on some new shit. Make sure you follow all our official accounts. We are at Swifties for Kamala on X, Instagram, and Threads and TikTok. You can also find links to all our accounts here. You can check that out, by the way. They've got the friendship bracelets as well, the coconut bracelet, the Vote Harris bracelet, pretty cool stuff right there. By the way, here's what Gavin Newsom previously said, Democratic governor from California, about Taylor Swift. Play the clip.
Well, I think Taylor Swift stands tall and unique. Now, I know you may not be as interested in Taylor Swift as so many others, but what she was able to accomplish just in getting young people activated to consider that they have a voice and they should have a choice in the next election, I think is profoundly powerful. And I think she's using her celebrity for good. I find it a height of irony. A lot of Republicans were critical of her encouraging people to register to vote, which says everything you need to know about the voter suppression going on in the Republican Party.
And as I mentioned,
and that's a really good point. So that's what I talked about yesterday, is that there are more registered Democrats than Republicans. And in fact, what was it, 63% of those that have been able to register since 2016, because of their age, coming to age from 2016 to now, 63% have been hard Democrats. And so therefore, if you get those registered, the Democrats will have that youth vote advantage, just naturally a sense of young idealism that fits better with the Democratic worldview than the Republican one. And so Republicans know that. And so anyone who then shouts about going out to register, as Taylor Swift has done, and got however many thousands and thousands of people registered, hundreds of thousands of people registered back in 2020, like, you know, they are going to be super afraid. And so that's why she is a target. And that's why you get people like Charlie Kirk and his type, like, absolutely slagging her off. And as mentioned, then you've got, you know, Donald Trump then realizing this and picking a fight with Taylor Swift. But that's not a fight I don't think he's going to win.
For those who are watching now and tuning into politics for the first time here, you're going to see a lot of weird stuff that Donald Trump does at his events. So one of the things that Donald Trump does, just to share it with you while you're watching this, is he does this as part of his speech. Play the clip.
You can do it, baby. I love you so much. And it's bad news. Bad things are happening. Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, I didn't do it.
And just so you see, Ben, what's that? Is that he really does that in all of his speeches? Not all of them, but there was a time where he was doing them like in every other speech where he would do this thing. I'll just show it to you one more time. Here, play the clip.
And they're proud, they're clapping, they're going crazy. I can't do it, Mom, I can't. Boom.
You know, and when I think about that clip, I think about what Vice President Kamala Harris once said. And this was actually, this clip I'm about to share with you was pulled by RNC Research. So this is how the Republicans are going after Vice President Kamala Harris right now. Play the clip.
We have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that fucking door down. Excuse my language.
Here's a new memo out from the Harris campaign this morning. They've raised $126 million since Sunday. Over $1.4 million in grassroots donors made donations since Sunday. Nearly 2,000 applied to work for the campaign in the first 24 hours, and over 100,000 people have signed up to volunteer since Sunday. I mean, that.
So when we talk about like manufactured enthusiasm, which I think he goes on to, does he have a section in this, or there's another section elsewhere on this about that comes from Ben Shapiro. I think it might be earlier. No, it's not. There's a Ben Shapiro video quote where Ben Shapiro talks about it's all manufactured enthusiasm. And you can't manufacture enthusiasm to the tune of $126 million raised since Sunday, to the point where 1.4 million grassroots donors made those donations, that 2,000 people have applied to work for the campaign in the first 24 hours, and over 100,000 people have signed up to volunteer since Sunday. It's just absolutely incredible numbers, and it isn't at all any form of like manufactured enthusiasm. This is genuine. And in fact, one of the Tommy Vitor here talks about his own experience of people around him being genuinely enthused.
Joe Biden is no longer the candidate. I'm not trying to be mean to him, but there is, this kind of exhale that we're no longer having a conversation about his age anymore. Yeah. But in addition to that, there is genuine excitement for Kamala Harris, and it's manifesting online in ways that I haven't seen since 2008. And also on the ground, I talked to my buddy Ben Wickler, who runs the Wisconsin Democratic Party. He says that, younger staffers at WisDems are telling him that they're hearing from friends who have never voted before, but now they're going to because they feel like this moment is historic. That was the word he used. The Milwaukee event that Harris did fit 3,500 people on very short notice and could have been bigger. They had, lines down the block. The state party raised $350,000 since Sunday. And the Harris campaign says that they've had 100,000 volunteer signups since Sunday. So that's real enthusiasm.
And, Ben, it might have been a few days after Ben Wickler had said that they were out knocking on doors and everybody thought the debate performance was bad. Virtually none of those Democrats who thought so said, and so I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. What this has done is cause that discussion to go by the wayside, because for people, and in Wisconsin and Michigan, this is going to be very, very important, because there were Democrats who went out and said, I'm dissatisfied with Joe Biden. Some of them were further dissatisfied by the debate performance. Now they've got a reason to come back. And it didn't need to be a massive reason, but it's a reason. And I think Kamala Harris has a remarkable opportunity here, not just for the first impression, but to shape what the discourse is going to be for the next 65 days and then 105 days or whatever.
And that's why her campaign ad is so important, because it puts a stall out for exactly what narrative she is proposing to the electorate. We have, more talk of these stats.
Kamala Harris, the president's unprecedented political sacrifice has been met with party unity and extraordinary levels of enthusiasm from Democrats for the fight ahead. $126 million have been raised. More than 100,000 volunteers have signed up, and 38,500 new voters have been registered. And
incredible. And, these are all to the benefit of the Democrats, it seems, because it looks like those registrations will be primarily Democratic voters. Vote.org has said in the 48-hour period since Biden announced his exit from the 2024 race, it saw roughly a 700% increase in daily new voter registrations, totaling over 38,500 in the period. Young voters 18 to 34 accounted for 83% of those registrations. Absolutely incredible. It isn't manufactured stimulus. Manufactured enthusiasm. There's genuine enthusiasm there, and you just need to go out and find and see what's going on. You need to just turn on the computer and look at all of the memes that are going around from various different sources and speak to people who are genuinely excited. I've seen so many interviews of random people who are really genuinely excited. Now, I was having this big argument on Twitter, as you do, with one of my video watchers that revolved around America being sick of my leftist crap or whatever it is. It just quite incredible. But there you go. You can go and check out my arguments here. But anyway, just trying to find exactly where it is. Look at the election map. All the leftists are nice and bunched up in a few shithole cities. You must be purged. You're being fed banned information. And it was something like, I can't remember. I can't see where it was. But it's the idea that America is sick of your leftist crap. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting thing for you to say, because first of all, you are speaking on behalf of America, and it's just you're sick of my leftist crap, whatever that may be. But the question is, well, what do Americans actually want? And are they sick of leftist crap? And what's really fascinating is this, and this is like actual empirical data. So who wins on policy? American support for Biden's and Trump's proposals. So this is a very clever thing that was done. So what do Americans think about policy proposals from the two leading presidential candidates, Joe Biden and Donald Trump? A recent survey asked whether Americans support or oppose more than 24 policies suggested by each candidate without specifying which one proposed them. In other words, you've got 24 policies here. You don't know who's proposed them. What do you like more? Of the policies included in the survey, the average share of Americans who support the 28 policies proposed by 28 by Joe Biden, 28 by Donald Trump, is higher than the average share supporting the 28 policies proposed by Trump. All but one of Biden's policy proposals, and get this, pledging 10 years of US military support for Ukraine, are supported by more people than oppose them. That is true of just 9 of the 28 Trump proposed policies, the only ones to receive net positive support. This result depends somewhat on the policies included and the wording used, but the contrast between 27 of 28 and 9 of 28. So Biden had 28 policies, 27 most Americans were in support of the 28. And Trump had 28 policies and only 9 of them had broad support. So when you say America is sick of the leftist crap, your leftist crap, actually they're not. Here are the policies that the leftist Biden is centrist in my opinion, but anyway, his policies are overwhelmingly more popular. This has happened in Britain as well. When I remember Giles Brandreth going around, I talked to you about this before, going around a very conservative place called Guildford in the UK. And he went around and showed everyone these policies. And everyone's like, that's brilliant, that's brilliant, that's brilliant. He said, you've just supported a Jeremy Corbyn policy. And everyone's like, no, I hate Corbyn. Blah, it can't be true. No. But what happens is when you when you untangle policy from the person, you'll find that people's support is vastly different, or policy from the party. And what you end up having is people being very disdainful about a policy merely because it comes from the others, from the other guys. But actually, in the cold light of day, those policies are, from the left, more popular than ones from the right. So that is interesting. And if that can be, if that can be sold to the electorate, if the Harris campaign is clever with the way that they sell their policy, then they should have a really good chance of winning this election. One of the interesting ones that she does seem to be going strong on gun control. Now, this is something I feel very, very strongly on, right? And I'm deeply in support of gun control. I live in a country where we don't have the right to bear arms, and I'm perfectly happy with that. Thank you very much. I don't have a Bill of Rights. I don't have a constitution that gives me an inalienable right to bear arms. Do you know what? I'm happy. I'm happier for it. I don't walk out the door thinking anyone in my neighborhood has a gun, because no one has a gun. Don't have guns. I'm cool with that. But I know it's a hot button topic for a lot of you out there, a lot of Americans. And she's actually going strong on that. And I was wondering whether that's one of those policies you just don't frontline it so much. Like, don't just lead with that. I'd say, yeah, this is something we're going to do, you know, if you're questioned on it, but lead on some other these less divisive policies. So anyway, you know that immigration and gun rights are going to feature big time in a way that the Republicans are going to campaign on that. Anyway, moving on. So another poll, I should have had this a little bit earlier. CNN has just repolled 2/3 of the respondents who participated in their April and June national polls. So they've taken 2/3 of people they've already spoken to and see whether there's a change. Top line is that Trump is up 49 to 46, but Trump has led Biden 49-43 in each of the previous two polls. So now you've had an immediate 3-point shift. So that 3-point swing, without anything having happened, without even the first campaign ad for Harris being produced, it's now out there, but it wasn't then. You had an immediate 3-point shift, and that swing, I think, is likely to go up. So it's going to be interesting to see where the polls go. Now we're going to go back on to JD Vance, and JD Vance again. This idea that he was just the wrong choice, and I think it's going to come back and haunt them. So this is JD Vance saying Americans without children should face the consequences and the reality and not get nearly the same voice in democracy. Let's give votes to all children in the country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children.
Let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children.
I presume this means the more children you have, the more votes you get, right? I think that's where that one is going. He's big on having lots of kids.
When you go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids. Let's face the consequences and the reality. If you don't have as much of an investment in the future of this country, maybe you shouldn't get nearly the same voice. Now, let's give...
Interesting. Is he at the intercourse studies? Anyway. Just, yeah, that's the sort of thing you talk about down a pub, right, with your mates and go, God, would you think that'd be a good idea? Is that fair? Like, because you have this kind of play around. This is the sort of thing we talk about at Tippling Philosophers, where you're in a kind of safe enough space. I don't mean that. I mean, as in, you come out with crazy ideas and you debate them and whatnot. But then just standing up and giving a speech and saying, yeah, I think people without children should have less enfranchisement in society. I don't think you should get nearly as much of a vote as someone with more children. You have more. Just like, I'm not sure that's a vote winner. Right, let's continue with him here. JD Vance should definitely keep talking about this. It's definitely bringing him into sharp focus, like a dramatic eyeliner makes one's raccoon eyes pop. That's a bit of a joke because he wears eyeliner. So JD Vance still thinks that attacking childless cat ladies is a winning message. So this is, I think, from his email out to his email list, mailing list, We've allowed ourselves to be dominated by childless sociopaths. They're invested in nothing because they're not invested in the country's children. Fighting back won't be easy. Our childless opponents have a lot of free time. That's why I need you to stand with me. Please ship in any amount in the next hour to stand with me as I fight for America's children. So it's actually, he's going hard on that. You know, double down. Go hard or go home, right? Right. Let's just check this out.
Another level, repeatedly saying, implying that he thought Donald Trump was a repeated sexual predator. And I think it's important to remember the context of when this was happening, right? It was just after that Access Hollywood tape came out. It was after all of these women came out following that tape, accusing Trump of sexual assault. And that's when Vance, take a look right here of what he wrote on Twitter. During that time, he wrote, what % of the American population has tagging him at real Donald Trump sexually assaulted? And that real, it isn't all of it. He also liked 2 tweets implying that Trump committed sexual assault, including one that said, quote, Trump was a thug real estate baron who commits serial sexual assault. And he also liked this other tweet in 2016 where he said, I wish there was a second vice presidential debate just to see Mike Pence deny Trump saying that he grabbed pussy. And this is all very ironic, right? Because now Vance is the one who has to defend those very comments from Trump as the VP pick. So that was then. This is a now. And take a listen after you heard that first clip to how Vance is defending Trump.
I think fundamentally the lawsuit is about something that happened 25 years ago. It's a he said, she said situation. And I trust my friend and the guy that I've known and gotten to know.
So he had originally said in 2016 it's a he said, she said thing, but he who would ever trust Trump? He said something to that effect. And now he's saying, and now I trust Trump. I've gotten to know him. I trust him. And it's like, before he's saying he's the biggest liar ever. Why would you ever trust him? Nothing he ever says is true. And he's saying, oh, I've got to know him. It's all true. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And so here, what you have here is an opportunity for, I think, the Democrats to really drive a wedge between Trump and Vance. Vance is a weakness, I think, for the Trump campaign. That although he's a Trump 2.0, he does have much worse opinions on a lot of things than Trump. And he's one to be very wary of. But also, they can absolutely dig the dagger in even deeper for Trump in showing all of these previous opinions that Vance has had, and then trying to get him to explain himself over and over again why he said this. Why just keep asking that question to him in these public interviews and whatnot. Why is it you said this about Trump, and why have you changed your mind? And then when Harris's VP goes into a VP debate with Vance, they are going to have so much ammunition. So when you look at the VP choice that Harris will make, I can't see that anyone's going to be deeply problematic. When you've got JD Vance and the opinions he's had that are simply not going to sit well with those center independent swing voters, women, then I think JD Vance is in a lot of trouble.
So obviously, he's just saying, well, I got to know him better, so now I don't think he did those things.
And he used the same language there too. He's like, it's a he said, she said, but now I believe Donald Trump.
And I believe the he. All right, now you also found a flip-flop on another major issue, which is obviously now at the center of this entire race. Would have been anyway, but it certainly is the way the Vice President Harris is putting it. That is, of course, abortion. And Vance had a very different view on that not long ago.
That's right. And abortion has become such a huge losing issue for Republicans. Every time that abortion has been on the ballot over the last couple of years, Republicans have lost. And now Vance is taking Donald Trump's line, which is that it's a state issue. The issue has been returned to the states. It's not a federal issue. But that's not what he was saying a couple of years ago. Take a listen to this.
I certainly would like abortion to be legal nationally. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. Ohio bans abortion, in 2022 or 2024, and then every day George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity. That's kind of creepy. If that happens, do you need some federal response to prevent it from happening? Because it's really creepy.
And I think what's interesting about that clip is he says the reason he wants a national abortion ban is because he doesn't think women should be allowed to travel between states for abortions. So obviously it's not a state issue, and how he was saying it then.
So that's just not going to do him very well at all. And he's actually got the lowest ever rating for a vice president, as we discussed yesterday. The average since 2000 for vice president has been plus 19. He's got -6. So the idea is that your VP should help out in the state that they are from. That's one of the reasons why you might pick them. So that's why you might go to Josh Shapiro to help you out in Pennsylvania. But you've got JD Vance in Ohio, who's actually been the worst performing politician in Ohio for the Republicans.
If you look at Ohio, JD Vance won in 2022, but he only won by 6 points. That's worse than Donald Trump did in 2020. It's far worse than Mike DeWine did in 2022. He was the worst performing Republican candidate in 2022 up and down the ballot in the state of Ohio. He had nothing there.
All right, so Trump does very well with white working class voters. That's one of his superpowers. So what does Vance add?
Yeah, what does Vance add? Look, he won white working class voters. He won white voters without a college degree in the state of Ohio. But pretty much every Republican wins white working class voters. And if you look here, again, the margin that Vance put up was the weakest performance of any major Republican. It's worse than Trump did in Ohio. It's worse than Mike DeWine did in Ohio. The J.D. Vance pick makes no sense from a statistical polling perspective, Erin.
All right.
And I go back to what I said, that J.D. Vance was a very poor strategic decision, and it's going to haunt them. I think it's going to haunt Trump. So then when we go back, we're just finishing up now. When we go back to the idea of there's this internet swell, the youth are behind Kamala Harris, it appears. There's this genuine groundswell of excitement that isn't manufactured. You are going to be also doing things and having your campaign teams create memes and generating things in a manufactured way, but it is both and, not either or. And then you have the Marsh family. Marsh family was super famous for during lockdown for creating music videos or songs that, and doing them from their home, and they've become a bit of an internet sensation. They've just done a song on JD Vance that is so good, you have to go and watch it. And this is absolutely music to the Democrats' ears, because you've got a spontaneously created attack ad on JD Vance that will probably do more damage than any other attack ad that the Democrats could think up. This is absolute excoriation of JD Vance from a family playing an ABBA song. It's brilliant. Go and find it. It's on YouTube. You can go and find it. Absolutely brilliant. And he even goes on to talk about being Putin. He's only one Big Mac away from a nuclear nuclear key. Just absolutely brilliant. Does mention, I think, doesn't mention Ukraine, but does mention Putin. Really good song, but it's stuff like that if the Democrats can generate that, then, or not the Democrats, if people generate stuff like that about the VP choice for Trump, then things are looking challenging for the Republicans. So how do the Republicans get this back? They've got to campaign. I don't know that they can, though. I don't think they're ready to campaign on sensible middle ground politics and policies. And they are just going to go, you're going to see them go hard on immigration. That is going to be what they are going to absolutely campaign on. And they'll try and tie Kamala Harris as the border czar to the immigration statistics, particularly from last year. This year, last few months, immigration has come down markedly, and actually that's something up the sleeves that the Democrats can bring back, can fight back with. But I think immigration is going to be the battleground, I think, for the for the Republicans. And then just let's talk elections is always good to look at polling, but he's looked at the vice president picks for the Democrats for Harris here, and he's arranged them in this way, and I would broadly agree, right? So you got J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom. They're not going to get chosen for various reasons. Gretchen Whitmer's ruled herself out. Pete Buttigieg, I don't think is... some people say he's not experienced enough. I actually think he would be perfectly fine on the knowledge and experience level. I broadly agree with this. You've got Cooper and Andy Beshear in a good position, but really I think it's going to be between Mark Kelly and Josh Shapiro. And I really do wonder whether, especially when you see the burning down of flags yesterday and Netanyahu speaking to, it was quite a bipartisan speech to Congress, but what was it? Half of the Democrats didn't turn up. So Gaza is an issue, and if you get Josh Shapiro, as good as he is and as nuanced as he might be, I think it could be a bit of a challenge there. Mark Kelly is strong on defense though, so that could be a similar kind of strong on helping out Israel. I don't know what his stance on Israel though is personally, but yeah, I think it's going to be between those two. Some people throw in others like Tim Walz and whatnot, but yeah, I don't know. I was originally thinking Josh Shapiro. Mark Kelly is not great at speeches or oration in the way that some of these others are, like Roy Cooper and Bashir himself and Josh Shapiro. I think it will be better with those public speeches and possibly in debate, but you never know. And Pete Buttigieg is exceptional at that. But Mark Kelly will bring other things to the VP nomination. So I have to wait and see. Let me know what you guys think. Anyway, thanks for watching. It's been another long one. Take care, guys, and speak to you soon. Toodle pips.